Shit, I like this camera better anyway. I like this camera better. So we waiting for our people to come back. And I appreciate y'all for coming back. Is this better? Is this better, Kendra? Let me know. What? What's so funny? Y'all like my shirt? They are for sale on my website, statevsurmag.com. And you can get it any color you want. It could be a black shirt with pink writing. I don't care. You can get it however you want it. Let's do it. Let's go. They said this is better. Let's go, Nick. Let's get busy.
Yo,
You
can
finally
you?
got it together, buddy?
It's not me, it's you. It's on you. It ain't on me.
That was my iPad.
Yeah,
So I just wanted a big screen, you feel me? Because I need to look at myself.
I hear you. But you wasn't gonna blame that one on me.
No, I wasn't. So I said, I had to bring out that new S21
Yeah.
Plus.
I
The
wasn't I,
good,
wa- I wasn't trying to get no more Facebook hate mail from you, so I was on this joint. I was on this joint extra early.
you ain't lying. You was contacting me like, yo, you ready? You there? You
Correct.
didn't want no smoke this time, right?
Nope, you ain't sending your hitters towards me no more.
Yeah, I ain't want to fire you up either. So
People was like, yo, Nick, why'd you do that to Tia? Boop, 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 da, da, da. I'm like, yo. I was like, they had no idea that we was going to get on the first day, but I was like, yo, can we just do like 45 minutes? She's like, nah, let's just reschedule it. All right. I
yeah,
didn't even
because
put
you
on
played yourself. Don't play yourself ever
I
again
didn't
with
play
me.
myself. I didn't. I got the text messages. I got receipts. You hit me up like,
Oh,
yo, you still
you
want
want to
to
do
do this?
receipts? You want to do
Yeah.
that? Because I can screenshot everything, buddy. You don't want that kind of blast.
No, I take all responsibility for the last time when we scheduled, and I just didn't put it on the schedule. I was out of town anyway, and I just didn't put it on the calendar, so that was all on me.
Well, I appreciate you for holding it down this time, and thank you for pulling up on us at State versus Us magazine, where we are the voice of the voiceless. And right now, you are the voiceless, and we're about to give you a voice.
All right, I hear you. I'm the voiceless.
Yes, you're the voiceless because white media don't give a voice to our black leaders and our black people. So State versus Us magazine is the voice for us. So here you can control your narrative, you can speak the truth, you can tell it how it is, and you can keep it a buck.
Well, historically, media does not give a voice
That's a
to
fact.
black leaders who speak up for black people. Right?
Right.
There's a whole bunch of folks that we consider black leaders that look like us, that might even come from our backgrounds, our communities, but they don't necessarily speak up for us the way that things need to be spoken, particularly behind the door, right? So it's
Right.
always like public discussions, it's always private discussions. But, being in politics for about 10 years, I've always found that real interesting.
So welcome to the
No,
dungeon. You ready to
I,
get
pre-
in it? You ready to get to it?
I know this was called the dungeon. I should have prepared for that. That's what this is called right here, the dungeon.
No, it's not called a dungeon, but welcome.
No, I appreciate you, sister, understanding. No, I was so hurt when I missed the first opportunity. So, but we got it right. So we here now.
Yeah, we got it right. So now that you made it today, now you owe me lunch.
I owe you,
You
and I made it today. All right.
and you ain't gotta be here for me to get lunch. You can just send it to the
Oh,
store.
okay. All right. You
Right
want
now,
steak and lobster?
behind me is just some of the books displayed in my bookstore. I am at my bookstore, at Urban Reed's Bookstore, 3008 Greenmount Avenue in Baltimore.
Go out and support.
Please. So let's get to it, Nick. You are from Baltimore, Maryland, Northeast Baltimore.
Born and
Let,
raised.
let everybody know what it was like for you in your era growing up right here in Baltimore City.
So, if you haven't heard my story, born and raised in Baltimore, I grew up in Northeast Baltimore, like you said. I grew up in a 3-bedroom house, typical Northeast Baltimore house with 6 women. So my grandmother, my mother, aunts, cousins, sister. Shared a bedroom with my sister and my mother till I was about 14 years old. Always thought I was going to grow up, have this family, and have a son to help me take out the trash. God's blessed me with 2 beautiful daughters and 3 beautiful nieces. So I'm still finding myself as sometimes the only male at family gatherings. But it was a typical story. I grew up with a single mother. But, you know, the difference between me and a lot of my friends was my mother had a mission all about me. She was 100, Eunice Orange was 110% about her son and her daughter and everything around them. So she was like the neighborhood mother. So, you know,
Yeah.
it was my mother that, you know, I always thank my mother for having that balance. Like, she allowed me to be a young boy growing up in the city, being around stuff, experiencing stuff. But she also had like this innate ability of like putting this instinct in me where I didn't get necessarily caught up in a lot of things that my friends got caught up in. And, you know, I'm just thankful for that.
Right.
You know, many of them still contact me to this day. You know, actually a friend contacted me a couple weeks ago and we had a chance to really like chop it up. But, you know, all my success, everything, if you ever hear a story about me, you will not know who Eunice Dolores Orange is. That was an amazing, beautiful, beautiful woman. Unfortunately, she was not there when I won my first election for city council.
In
She had knew that
2011.
that was like a lifelong type of situation. But you know, I stand on the shoulders of Eunice Dolores Orange.
And that's what's up. So salute to Miss Eunice, one of our ancestors.
Yep, my baby.
You graduated from Baltimore City Polytechnically. My son is about to graduate from Poly
I
in
thought he went to
June.
City. I thought he played football at
No,
City.
that's my little
Oh,
brother. My little brother go to City. My son goes to
oh,
Poly. I
okay.
was
I'm interested.
determined that my child was going to go to Poly.
It's only one. It's only one school in the city. Yeah. So I went to run off my schools. I went to Hartford Heights, Yorkwood Elementary, Chickapin, and then Poly. That's my.
So you was ratchet until you got to Poly.
I wouldn't say that, but so it's crazy. So my whole family's from Baltimore. So my father is well known in East Baltimore. He's from like Broadway, Landville, and then my mother was from West Baltimore. She's from like Franklin Square neighborhood, Mulberry Street. So my whole family has always been like East and West Baltimore. When they built the viaduct, my mother and her family, they were split up because they lost their home in a very controversial fire when
Mm,
the city and state was trying to build the highway. But then they ultimately pooled their money together, 3 women, my grandmother, my oldest aunt, and my mother, and bought a house in Northeast Baltimore to like, you know, put the family in a better community. So the 3 of those women moved to Northeast Baltimore. You know how strong Black women are. Shout out to Black Girl Magic. One of
hey,
the only first Black people on the block. Then when we moved to Northeast Baltimore and experienced a lot of stuff, you know, back in the 60s or whatever. So again, that's why I always like just I'm so thankful for, you know, what they instilled in me. I could just remember my grandmother always telling me like, yo, you're gonna be the first person in our family to go to college. So for me, that's all I thought about. Like, it wasn't
yeah.
anything other, right? So she just gave me this idea of like really dreaming about what I wanted to do and how I wanted to do it. So you talk to friends like back in elementary school or middle school, they'll tell you exactly what like I wanted to do in life. And, you know, I've been blessed to be in certain positions and have certain opportunities to do that.
And that's a beautiful thing that you said that you the first generation college. You
Yeah, I'm
went to
first person in my
Tuskegee.
family to go. Yeah, I'm first person in my family to go away to college, graduate from college, you know, all of that. You know, I'm thankful for that. And again, that's not, I'm gonna constantly tell you, it don't have nothing to do with me. It has everything that was poured into me by those 6
Right,
women. You know, my
right.
grandmother being the matriarch of the family, my mother, my aunts, you know, my sister who's my biggest supporter, and my other sister who's really a cousin that is a huge supporter and has always been around for me as well.
And you went to Tuskegee. You went to a HBCU. So you just didn't go to any school. You went to a HBCU where you're going to get the love, the right side of education, the right type of love, and the right respect. What made that decision happen?
So again, back talking about Eunice, she always had me in different programs. So I was in a program called like, so I'm gonna tell you a story real quick. So I struggled going from Chickapin to Poly, like
Hold on, Nick.
significantly.
I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
It just went.
It's like,
There you
can you
go.
hear me now?
Yeah.
You can hear me now? So I was gonna tell you. So I tell people this story all the time, but I struggled like severely going from like Chickapin to Poly. So, you know, I always say Baltimore City Public Schools literally failed me the first 8 years of my life. You know, at Chickapin, we was doing like multiplication, division, adding and subtraction in the 8th grade. I go to Poly, you got to take algebra 2.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd always my mother always made sure I was in school, always made sure I was doing my work, always got great grades. But when I went to Poly, I almost failed out. Back in the day, if you failed more than 2 classes, you had to go to your zone school, right? And my zone school was Northern. That's where all my friends in my neighborhood and everybody from Chicopee kind of went. So I failed 2 classes and passed the 3rd class by like 1 point. My mother found this program called Upward Bound. Shout out to Mr. Green and everybody from Upward Bound. And that was a program where you went on a college campus for 6 weeks. But more importantly, every Saturday, they basically gave you tutoring services for all your classes. So that kind of really helped me catch up to like where I needed to be to at least sustain being at Poly. And at Upward Bound, they had this career college tour that took us to all these HBCUs. And Mr. Green was like, yo, none of the schools that we went to, I think for you, but I think you should look at these other HBCUs. And Tuskegee was one of them. I got a brochure in the mail. They sent me down to Tuskegee for a week and I was sold. I wanted to go away. I always wanted to do something different. Everybody was going to like Morgan or schools in the area. I wanted to kind of go far away and just do something different. And, I'm blessed to be able to have an amazing college experience and go to Tuskegee.
And what was that life like at HBCU?
Well, before we get to the HBCU part, let's just talk about being in the rural South. I mean, no movie theaters, no malls. You barely got a McDonald's. You barely got, a grocery store. And you just with like all these young, Black, progressive folks from all around the country stuck in the woods.
Right.
That's what Tuskegee is. I mean, our closest mall and things that we would look at like normal life was probably about 20, 25 minutes away at Auburn, a big white institution, that we would go to the mall and go shopping and everything. But HBCUs was an amazing experience. I try to really encourage young folks to go to HBCUs, no matter your discipline, because it was that type of, one, you can't escape the network. So when I think back to the folks that I went to school with and the amazing things that they're doing now, like around the country, I go to any urban area and I could literally probably find somebody from Tuskegee doing something that's pretty major. It is really important. But then also the love you get. I was in a very challenging major in electrical engineering. And I had professors that like really believed in me, believed in us, and knew that what they poured into us could be invaluable. And I tell people this story all the time. I'm gonna make it real quick, but my experience at Tuskegee was strange. First, I got in, right? And I never forget going to BWI, and I had like 13 bags packed, right? I never been on a plane really before. So the flight woman is like, yo, you can't bring 13 bags on this plane. You can only bring, check-in 2, carry-on 2, and at the time, and then you had to pay for the other one. So I consolidated all my bags, got it down to a number, whatever, and I think I had to pay like $600. It was all the money I saved up going to Tuskegee, thinking that was a lot of money. I was going to be good. So I give her the $600. Boom, me and my mother go down to Tuskegee. We there. My mother spends the night in Montgomery, Alabama. She wakes up the next day. She's crying, boo-hooing, because she got to get on a plane, leaving me 1,000 miles away in Tuskegee, Alabama. She leaves. I'm having fun. Next day, you got to go and you got to register for classes. So I go to register for my classes. I was prepared, filled out everything, got in line, got to the woman after 2-hour wait. And she's like, yo, you got to pay $1,200 to get into school. I don't have $1,200, man. She's like, well, if you don't have $1,200, you can't register. You need to go and wait in another line in the financial aid building. So I run to financial aid building, do all of that. I get assigned to the financial aid counselor called Miss Henderson. She's really, really important to the story. So I had to fill out all these loan paperwork and all this other stuff. And, everything is rejected. My mother's rejected, whatever. Anyway, Tuskegee gets me into school. So I'm in school. I went over this process like every single semester trying to register for school. It was always a joke of my friends of like, is Nick in school yet? Like, did he get registered yet? Anyway, Tia, this carried over for my junior year, Maryland sophomore year. My junior year, Maryland sophomore year. To when the Board of Regents came down, he was like, yo, if you owe money, either you got to pay up now or you're getting put out of school.
Or you get out.
Right? So at this point, my balance had accumulated to like $3,000, $4,000.
That's a lot of money back then.
Oh, it's a lot of money right now.
Yeah, it is.
My mother, she didn't have the money, right? So I knew I was going home. Marilyn's in my dorm room illegally because it was no co-ed like sharing or whatever. She in there boo crying. I walk to the bursar's office to the walk of death. I always tell people. I get up to the line and I'll never forget my student ID number. At Tuskegee, it was 106-306. And I go to the front of the line. I'm like, yo, student ID 106-306. I'm just trying to see if I have a balance, knowing that I got a big ass balance. The woman, like, in her country southern voice, like, baby, you don't have no balance. Your balance is zero. So being from Baltimore, I'm like, yo, can you print that out for me? Because I want you to print that out. I want to be able to see Nick Mosby, zero balance on there. She prints it out. I'm like, yo, can you look at the transactions on my account? She's like, yeah. She looks at the transactions on my account. She's like, that's crazy. 3,000, whatever the number was placed on your accounts yesterday by financial aid. So I say, print that out for me too. So she prints it out for me. I grab the paper and I run straight to the financial aid building where I go see Miss Henderson. Go into Miss Henderson's office, shut the door. I'm like, Miss Henderson, I just came from the bursar's office. She's like, Nick Mosby, I knew I was going to see you today. I was like, yo, what happened? How did this happen? She was like, well, we know everybody's getting put out of school. She's like, I know your situation. And we had a pot of money. Many people gave, this kid 250, 500,000 here and there. I gave you most of my money. She's like, because I know that the only thing that's stopping you from this degree and being the first person in your family to graduate from college is money. And she was like, I want you to go on and do well or whatever. So as soon as I graduated, got my first job, I sent her 2 dozens of roses. When I went back to homecoming, I made sure I hunted her down and found her. But I tell kids this story all the time because, at Tuskegee, the financial aid building is literally right across the street from the student union. So every single day, my friends would go into the student union. We'd be obnoxious and whatever, all the stuff we used to do. And I would literally sneak across the street and go to the financial aid building and chop it up with Miss Henderson. So Miss Henderson knew everything about me, what I wanted to do. She knew all about my mother. My mother at the time was
Did you know about Marilyn being in that dorm room illegally?
She didn't know about that. Nobody knew about that.
So Miss Henderson didn't know everything.
No, she didn't know everything. But my mother was sick at the time, so she kind of knew all that story. And I tell people this. I was like, because when you are destined for something and you have a purpose in life and you're really working towards trying to get that goal, you're going to naturally take those progressive, productive steps in that right direction, whether you know what you're doing or not. I didn't know going in every day talking to Miss Henderson was going to somehow pour my story out to her and she was going to look out for me in a different way. I was just doing what I thought I needed to do because I knew the only thing that was going to really stop me was financial aid. So I needed to kind of build that relationship. But I never knew that circumstance was going to come where she was going to have to be there for me. And that's exactly what happened. And she was. And I'm so thankful for that. But no, the Tuskegee experience was crazy. I used to hitchhike. My mother would fly me down to I couldn't imagine doing this to an 18, 19, 20-year-old, but my mother we would try to find the cheapest ticket down south. She would fly me to Birmingham or wherever, Atlanta. I would have to catch a Greyhound, through these country towns, sleeping on my bag, sleeping in Greyhound stations. One time I hitchhiked from Huntsville, Alabama to Tuskegee. So it was a crazy time, but I'm thankful for the experience. And I know that it literally made me today, the man that I am today. So, I'm truly blessed. And again, shout out to Eunice Dolores Orange.
Is it safe to say that your struggle really occurred in college?
Yeah. I mean, because, after when I graduated from college with the electrical engineering degree, I made the most of my family. So I didn't, really want for anything in a different way. I was so thankful. So it really, the Eunice Dolores Orange experience really worked out for me. The first car I bought in my life was when I graduated from college and I bought it for my mother. So that was the type of relationship that we had. And that was the type of experience. But no, yeah, I mean, Tuskegee was a struggle. But when you come from a certain environment, struggle looks different.
Right.
So now, when I'm seeing the things I'm able to do with my girls or as a man, I'm able to look back and stuff that was normalized to you, because in my situation, when I got home, I was wrapped in love, right? So regardless of whether the lights were on, regardless of how much food was in the refrigerator, regardless of our situation, it was nothing but love there.
Right.
And many of our kids don't experience that in a way that I experienced it. So I tell folks I was rich in love. And that's all
Right.
that really carried me. But, you know, when you look back and you see certain situations, you understand and know that what was normal is not necessarily the way nature intended it. But no, I'm thankful for my experience, and definitely appreciative to, you know, all the amazing women that were in my life growing up.
And one of them was Miss Henderson. Where is she right now? Do you know?
She's still in Alabama. I haven't spoken to her in like 4 or 5 years.
We gotta
Last
go see
time
Miss Henderson. Let's go
we gotta
see
go
her.
see Miss Henderson. Miss Henderson's story, man. Yeah, she's. I love Miss Henderson.
So just let's go ahead and fast forward. You met your wife there. And you're still together. What was that experience like? Because a lot of people don't think that you can move on from relationship and build relationships from your college, and a lot of people do it. You did it, and it's been proven. What was that like? Explain to the people, what was it like when you first laid eyes on Marilyn? What did you do to get her? Like, what happened?
Well, she might tell you the story a little differently, but I'm gonna tell you the truth. Um, Again, we down south, right? So being from the north or whatever, we took a different level of swagger to Tuskegee. People knew
Yeah,
who we was. We had the Timbs on,
yeah.
the
They
polo
didn't have that
bigs.
back then.
I had my Cuban link, Jesus piece, all of that, hats and all that. So it was just a different like vibe for me on a campus being so far down south. So we're there, me and all my friends. We hang out in the Union, like I told you, and we meet these girls from up north. They're from Boston. It's 3 of them. And we go talk to them, and we obnoxious, yelling and screaming. I'll bet one of our homeboys was from Boston, too. He wasn't in school yet, but we introduced ourselves to Maryland. And so as a joke, we like, yo, Vahid? And so they're like, nah, we don't know Vahid. Like, oh, get out here. Y'all ain't nothing. How y'all know Vahid? He from Boston. So they looking at us like, these country dudes down here thinking we know everybody from Boston, whatever. So it was all a joke. And so that's the last time I really saw her until one day hanging out in the cafeteria. It's all of her homegirls that she met up with all my friends. We all start talking, and me and her just like talked. And we talked about everything. We talked about, music, clothes. We talked about politics. She was from a real interesting perspective. She was from like the inner city of Boston. So for in terms of Maryland, Marilyn, my wife, is like from say like North and Longwood, right? So she's from what Boston considers the hood, right? But she was bused like an hour and a half, 2 hours away to school every day to say Montgomery County. So she had a real interesting perspective. Boston still has like the longest educational like busing program in the entire country. It was called Mecca,
What?
right? Yeah, so they still bus their inner city kids because their schools are, subpar or whatever. They bus them to the richer counties. So like say for Baltimore City kids, we would be bused to like, Delaney or say like Howard County, Montgomery County. That takes place
Yeah.
still in Boston. So she was in that program, but she told me about all the ills of like, her community, what she wanted to do, how she wanted to be a public servant. And it was just cool the way that we struck. And I'm not sure if we haven't not spoken a day since then. So we like stayed on the phone all night, the whole you hang up first, I hang up first,
The
right?
cord pulling this long.
Correct. So at that point, I still didn't really shoot my shot yet, right? Because I'm a sophomore, she's a freshman, and this dude that I was real cool with was messing with one of her was dating one of her friends, and he was like, yo, that girl Marilyn like really likes you or whatever. And I was at the time I was Mr. Sophomore. I was Mr. Freshman, Mr. Sophomore, Mr. Junior, whatever. And he was like he at the thing where I was announced Mr. Sophomore, she was like happy and giggly eyed, and so he was like, yo, she like you, like you should holler at her or whatever. So then me being obnoxious, the next day in the cafeteria, her and her homegirls are sitting away from me and my friends, and I just take a chair, put it in the middle of the floor, and I just start staring at her, and she start getting all blush and stuff and all frantic. She gets up and leaves. And so it was crazy. It's like a movie. That night, we go to a party. I bump into her at the party, ask her for her number again because I think I lost it. And from there, we've been together ever since.
That's a dope story. And she also appeared in one of these court shows, fighting the.
I was there. Do you know that story? Now, that story is crazy.
Yo, she had attitude.
Maryland has always, that's the thing. So it's
Always
crazy.
got attitude.
it's crazy because like people see Marilyn like today, but it's cool because I know that that is who she has always been. Like she's
Hmm.
always been about like what's right versus what's wrong. She's never going to like not advocate for like, you know, what's right versus. I would never forget getting that call. I was still at home when she went down to Tuskegee and went into her apartment. So at the time, somebody had broken into her apartment
Apartment, yeah.
in the break, and they were using her apartment and running up her bills and all this other stuff. And it was this cigar smoke shop downstairs, and they broke the door to get in and whatever. But I'm never forgetting that call. She was going off like, "Yo, somebody broke into my apartment, da da da," and all this other stuff. I'm like, "Yo, chill, chill." Till I get down there, she's like, "No, forget that. I'm going to go confront them." So she goes to the police. She goes to this person, that person. Now again, we're in a small town, so the dude who did it, that owned the shop, father, like was on the police force. They didn't do nothing. So she was like stuck in a rock and a hard place. And she started calling all these TV court shows. All of them called her back. They was like, "Yo, we want to get you out here. We want to fly you here. We pay you this. We pay you that." And of course, at the time, the iconic one was Judge Judy.
Right.
And she went to Judge Judy. She won. Judge Judy was like, "Yo, I would have given you more money." And yeah, that was a pretty funny story.
So you graduated in the engineering field. You went on to work for Verizon, but what made you want to go into politics?
What name am I going to say? What name I'm going to say to you? Eunice Dolores Orange. I'm telling you. So
Your ancestor.
I used to wait on. My mother used to work at Social Security. So from Northeast Baltimore to Woodlawn, that's a pretty big hike on the bus. So she'd catch like two buses, whatever, to get there. But I used to wait on a bus stop for my mother to get off work, just so I could walk her to Northwood Elementary School and go vote. We stand in that line, we go vote, pull the curtain back. I get to play with all the buttons, whatever. And I was just like really into it. Like that's what she was. But when Kurt Schmoke, the first African American elected mayor of
Yeah.
Baltimore, won, my mother was one, like all about him, really supportive. But she was like, it was kind of like a microcosm of like when Barack Obama won in 2008 as president.
Right.
It was historic for the city. So like her, to me going to school and my teachers, and you know, I just always wanted to like be in politics. I wanted to be a public servant. So, you know, that really like sparked a lot in me. So you look at me at Chicopin or at Poly, I was always SGA president. You know, just
You were on
always.
a debate team in
Uh,
Poly. You was on a debate team in Poly.
no, that was at Tuskegee. I was on a
Okay.
ethics team to stay around Maryland because she was on it. She was like, "Yo, you should do this." So I did it, and we was on this little like bioethics debate team.
And did you like it?
Yeah, yeah, it was cool. I mean, we used to travel, so that was cool to get away from school, and we would compete against like you know, like a lot of big schools. Like we go against Navy or we go against like different Ivy League schools. So it was a real dope experience.
So you decided to run for city council and you won. And
Well,
you
the first
spent
time I
five
lost. I
the
lost the
first
first
time?
time. Yeah, I lost when I ran for the first time when I was like 25, 26. I
Okay.
didn't know anything about politics, didn't have any money. Back to Unison, she was my biggest donor. She gave me $800 from her income tax return. I raised like $8,000. We knocked on every door. We did everything backwards, which you're not supposed to do to run a campaign, but we worked our butts off, and I learned a lot. So then I came back 4 years later, and that's when I won. You know, I basically learned from the experience prior. Came back. Everybody said I couldn't win because I was running against a person that had won 2 times in a row, had a really strong name in West Baltimore. They told me like, "Yo, you lost the first time. You can't lose 2 times in a row. Don't run. Wait your turn. Wait your turn. Wait your turn." My mother died the year before,
Mm.
and I just decided to run. I was like, "Yo, I'm gonna do it. If it don't work out, I'm just gonna keep doing this engineering thing." And I ran and I won, and you know, we've been in politics ever since.
And you spent 5 years as the city council. Then you
Yep.
moved on to become a delegate. And then you became the who you are now, who is the president of the city council. Um, Let everyone know what this experience and journey has been, not just as a politician, but as a black leader in Baltimore City. What has this experience been for you?
Well, I mean, when you look at the core of it, like, you know, this is I'll tell you where Nicholas Mosby is like now, being like 10 years in the game. When you look at the core of it, you know, we fight, and I pass a lot of big bills in Annapolis as well as in City
Give
Hall.
three of them. Give three major bills that you are part of.
Well, the biggest bill, one that's most germane to this show, is ban the box.
That's
Monica
right.
Cooper,
Ban the
shout out
box,
to her.
baby.
Hopefully she watching. But Baltimore had the most progressive ban the box policy in the entire country.
Yes, it
Um,
is.
Two beautiful women came to me with this idea. They said, yo, this is
Monica.
crazy. What you taking on? I'm like, yo, I'm going to take it on. They was like, nah, but we don't think you know what you're getting yourself into. I did it. And we did it to like the max where, the business folks were really upset. A lot of folks were upset, but we were able to get it passed in Baltimore. Excited about that. Another bill that I think is important to like a show like this is I opened up $80 million in GED funding for $80 million in scholarship funding for GED recipients. Before the state had all this money set aside but it excluded only if you had your high school diploma. I opened it up for folks that were just ready to go to college. I thought that was really important. I saved the Preakness from leaving Baltimore and going to Anne Arundel County. How Park Heights hasn't really benefited from the Preakness being there. That doesn't mean that we should throw the baby out with the bathwater. We need it to stay there, but we also need to figure out ways where the community can connect not only to the atmosphere of what goes on with Preakness, but also the amount of money and economics that happens through Preakness, connecting them. I fought.
Let me stop. Before
I
we
got more. I
continue.
got more. I got more.
I know, but before we get to the fourth one, let's get to the Preakness. Because a lot of people think that's why Catherine Prue was attacked. Because once she started bringing up the things about the Preakness and trying to save the Preakness and a lot of stuff going on, they think, because after that, she was attacked. She was another black leader that was attacked. So a lot of people think that was part of it. Do you want to speak on that?
I don't know. I don't know anything about that. I know that I tell you the temperature in Annapolis at the time was that the Preakness was gone, and that there was no way we were going to save it. I came up with this idea of really exposing the way that the horse racing industry was treating workers, particularly Hispanic workers, where they wanted to move the track down in Laurel. I showed up with the county executive and about 5 or 6 cameras, and they started showing this stuff, and it really showed the inhumane treatment of the workers of the track. And that put a lot of people on pause, and I just really kept working in the back rooms to, kind of strike a deal to keep the Preakness in Baltimore. And that's how I stayed in Baltimore, as it relates to, how folks started looking at her and started trying to uncover some of the stuff that she was involved in. I really have no information or knowledge of that. Okay,
so what's your fourth one?
The fourth one would be, again, just really talking about economics. There's this new industry that's going to pop up in Maryland called sports betting. And when I was in Annapolis my last year, and this got a lot of people upset in Annapolis, there was a bill that came out of the Senate unanimously, meaning every single senator in the state of Maryland voted for this bill, that basically gave this brand new license to people who own a professional sports stadium, a thoroughbred racetrack, or a casino. We know all those folks don't look like me and don't look like you. Right. So I'm like, yo, how in 2020 do we pass a bill that is literally the poster child for structural racism? You got this country club of a table, and only these folks have access to this license, and there's no competitive process. So I killed that bill, which made a lot of enemies in Annapolis at that particular time, to come back to ensure that there was minority equity and participation for this new multi-million-dollar industry. I passed a bill, a $1 million bill for endowment bill for HBCUs. It was a very creative bill that's going to, grow HBCUs endowments year after year after year. Excited about that. The list goes on and on. I passed a lot of bills, but I think we started out this conversation was what I've learned is that, you could fight for social justice change, and I'm at the forefront of it. My wife is at the forefront of it, and we're going to stay there. But in order to really change the outcomes in our communities, to really, provide real opportunities for the young folks coming behind us, it's about changing the economics, right? And it's about having a seat at the table through economics, right? And until we're able to recycle those dollars in our communities like you're doing with your bookstore, that's why all folks should go out and support you. That's why you should support other businesses that kind of look like you. Until we're able to get ahead of that and control our dollar and really change generational wealth in the city of Baltimore and all urban areas throughout this country, we will not be where we think we should be or where we ought to be, right? And that is literally the foundation of this country. This country is built on capitalism. This country was built on the blood, sweat, and tears of folks that look like you and me that weren't paid anything, that were used as tools, that was used as commodities, that were used as as nothing more than animals, right? And folks benefited that greatly, and they made a lot of money off of that. And still to this day, until you're able to get ahead of those economics, you can't get ahead of the conditions that this construct of what we call America in our society has built around us. So, at my new role on the city council, the one thing I constantly push is really digging into these contracts. I mean, the city of Baltimore is a $3.6 billion industry when you look at our capital and operation budget, right? But when you look at when you reflect on the companies and the vendors and the services that are being awarded these bids, it's not a true reflection of like the city of Baltimore. It's nowhere near. One statistic I like to pull out is like 30 years ago on the Black Enterprise magazine, Baltimore had about 14 out of the top 100 African-American owned businesses in the entire country. When you look at that list today, it's just one. And when you look at the amount of African-American wealth in this area, when you look at our population in this area, when you look at the level of African-American leadership and politicians in this area, that is extremely troubling. And so that's why I continue to push, continue to dig into these contracts, and continue to provide real opportunities for Black-owned businesses, because I know it's those businesses that's going to in turn have the cultural competency and connection to the communities to then in turn hire young folks, to then in turn mentor young folks, to then in turn continue to build this germ of where you have these bustling businesses that are no longer just trying to compete for subcontracts, but are now becoming prime contracts.
And I'm glad you said about the Black economics and everything, because Black America is 13.4 population here in America, but we are only 0.5 of the wealth. So it's all about design, like you said, the statistics with what it was back then versus now is only one. And it's all about design. What do you think? I already know what you're going to say. What has to happen, like you just said, is support. We got to pour money into us, because in the Jewish community, the dollar circulates 17 times, but in the Black community, it circulates one. I'm just trying to get us to circulate it twice. So what are the things that we have to do? Give 3 things that we have to do to make that happen.
I mean, one, we gotta, this idea that. So I always find it interesting that folks in our community, particularly folks that you fight for, I fight for. So particularly for the I fight for and that you fight for, they tired, they frustrated. Like, look, you failed my grandfather, you failed my father. Why should I expect that there's going to be any level of commitment to my progress to me? So this idea that, the lack of participation in government is definitely understandable, but that's not going to get us in the right position, because you need folks at the table, right? We need to prepare young folks and young leaders who understand, are tied into our communities, to not shy away from being at those tables, because it's still those tables that are making all the decisions, right? And politics is as local as possible, right? So we need folks at the table, right? So this whole idea of being disenfranchised and not participating in the process is a wrong and just a false narrative. Second, we have to be smart about what we're really preparing our young folks for, and that starts with education. It's good to put your kid in a Gucci belt and Jordans and have them looking fly, but I need as much emphasis on his schoolwork and his education as possible. Because the fact of the matter is, if you don't have a Eunice Dolores Arms, the school system will fail you, because education has always failed us. Education has always been a stopgap of whether we are able to ascend or whether we're able to kind of just stay status quo for what society has created for us, right? So this idea that we can't be so intentional, that education is so important to us in our everyday lives, to our young folks, it's just completely putting us asinine and continuing, perpetuating the situation that we're in. And then lastly, I think about, a lot of times, Black folks, we want to forget about where we're from. We want to forget about what we've been through. We want to
Run that back again.
I said we want to be proud, right? So we want to forget about where we're from. We want to look in the mirror, see how fly we are, see what we're doing, what we driving, who we with, and we won't forget about the struggles that we had and the mistakes that we made that put us in the position that we are. We have shared such a unique story that, particularly if you Black, and you make it out of a place like Baltimore City, that experience that you talked about earlier is invaluable, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we need to impart that experience. We need to impart that knowledge on young folks that are coming behind us, because the reality is, I don't care how you grew up in the 80s or 90s, it's harder for our kids today. You know,
Facts.
there was way more opportunity, you know, whether you was playing in Project Survival or BNBL, whether you was going to your rec, no matter what you was into, even the kids that was not doing nothing right or positive at all, they still had access to opportunities. Our young folks today are struggling. They're
Yes.
struggling in school. They're struggling on the street. They're struggling when they close the door and go in their house. So for us not to know that it's really, really important for us to pour back into young folks behind us, it's important. So again, it's about Black business. It's about controlling our economics. But then it also kind of always, it's about education, right? How we put people in a position to sit at those tables that we talked about. And then it's about protecting our young folks to ensure that they have real opportunities. The one thing I'll say is, even with Baltimore City budget, it's this thing called inflation, right? It's like a measurement of economy, right? When you look at inflation for the past 40 years, public safety has completely outperformed inflation as it relates to the amount of dollars that we're putting into public safety here in the city of Baltimore. But education, recs and parks, and all that other stuff, guess what? Underperforms inflation. So that means we're giving our young folks less opportunities. We're putting less money into providing them with opportunities than we were 30, 40 years ago. I mean, this is no secret. We know it. But I like to say stuff not based off of my emotion. I like to say stuff based off of facts. And that's just
Right.
real deep.
But let's get emotional real quick, because I'm tired. You feel
You gonna
me?
get emotional? You got your tissue, because I don't have no
I
tissue.
don't need no tissue because I'm not crying. I'm ready to see. It's to the point that I'm one of those soldiers. You know, you got the field niggas and you ready to go. You feel me? But then you got the house niggas. You know, the Harriet Tubman ones, the one that one that Harriet Tubman said she a sheep. But we have to keep, I'm going to keep it a buck. And if I didn't have white friends already that's dope as hell, that's trapped in the wrong body, they should be in our body, I wouldn't think that it would be any dope white people. You feel me? So when I look at the overall picture of what white America has done to us, and we talking about slavery 402 years and counting, because this year 402. And when we look at the shit that they systematically put in day after day, and we got Black people backing this shit, bigging it up. When we see them attacking our Black leaders, such as you and your wife, which pisses me off. And I text you. I seen a news clipping 5:30 in the morning, and I just happened to be up. I had to hit the bathroom, and I see the news. I see with the news on, and I say, they still messing with them? They still fucking with them is what I said. I said, wait a minute. I text you. I said, yo, you ready to come get this? You ready to come get this with this Black media? Because we got Fox 45 News Baltimore. We got Baltimore Sun. We got the Baltimore Brew. You guys are constantly attacked, not quarterly, not yearly, but fucking daily. Matter of fact, every time they go to print, y'all are in that piece. So, and it bothers me when I see Black people who looks like you, who looks like me, and looks like your mom, who egg this shit on and be like, yo, let's think them. And they asking for y'all to step down, and they asking for y'all to resign over the same shit that white people do every day.
Well, I don't know what I did, so you gotta tell me that.
You didn't do anything, but what they accusing you of, white people been doing it, but no one brings them up. Baltimore Sun been racist. Baltimore Brew been racist. But when we don't see people like Hogan and the rest of these white leaders in Baltimore or Maryland, who got homes in other states, got real estate in other parts of the country, got real estate in other parts of Maryland, and we don't address them, but soon as Black people who are powerful, because let's be clear, Nick Mosby and Marilyn Mosby are powerful Black leaders in Maryland. So when we look at you guys and what y'all doing, and like you said, you made some enemies because you team us, full us, by us, nothing about us without us. So when you challenge these motherfuckers, they look at you like, oh, you want to challenge me? Because you know when white people get challenged, they don't like that shit. They feel like you coming for them. So it's a petty thing to me that when they don't criticize and go after other people, they just go after all our black leaders. I just sat here and watched these people go after all black leaders, and not one time was O'Malley put in the same pedestal, Hogan put in the same pedestal, and anybody else was put in the same pedestal but black leaders. Let's talk about that shit because I'm tired.
It's real. I mean, it kind of goes back to my thing when I talked about, they let you march. It's cool to, fight for social justice change and, fight for change laws. But when you start talking about economics, things change. And I think it's always interesting, how much they talk about how much my wife makes. Like every mention you get, you probably look at like 25, 30, 40, 50 times in certain publications on like how much she makes. And it's like, why is that important? Like, she also works like 50, 60 hours a day. She's at every community meeting. She's at every school. She's answering every email, every call. I don't know of another person that works as hard as my wife, works, for her community. So I find it interesting. I find it interesting when, folks comment about the fact that she's going on trips to go after the war on drugs and see the way other people have done it to bring it back to Baltimore as a problem. But what we do know is, particularly with her, just talking about her, the policy stance that she just recently took when she said, I'm only going to prosecute violent crimes and victim crimes. I'm not going to.
That's an enemy in itself because last year in June, if I'm not mistaken, I'm not showing the numbers, but I know it was a couple hundred. I want to say last June it was 500 or 800 when she said
she let out.
Yeah.
No, she let out like 3,000 people.
No,
right?
Not the people that let out. When she said she wasn't prosecuted, it was a certain amount of cases.
Oh, it was I think like 700-800 cases.
Yeah, there was 800.
She said
and then she just did another 520 something cases that she not prosecuted. People went freaking nuts. Like, why are we spending our tax dollars on frivolous shit? Right?
Well, see, the thing is, it's not only our tax dollars of like locking folks up in this revolving door, particularly folks with mental health issues or folks with substance abuse issues. Whether you consider weed substance abuse or whatever, but you're locking people up for smoking weed.
Weed ain't substance abuse.
Hurry up and
pass the law, okay?
Everybody's going to say that, right? So you're going to lock somebody up and they're going to get out in a couple hours, right, to go back to the street, to go smoke weed again or whatever else, right? So, she was like, we're not doing this anymore, right? But see, what you got to think about, particularly the harder drugs, not just weed, the harder drugs, those people get referred to substance abuse programs. Those substance abuse programs have certain business models that have a certain amount of people that need to be in those programs so they can get that money. And it's a whole ecosystem of that. And I'm not saying that there aren't programs out there that do great work. There are. I'm not saying that people shouldn't be in those programs because they should, they need it. But when you talk about that ecosystem and how much money that is, when you're no longer locking those people up. So like, I think over the past year, there's been an 80% decrease in arrests associated with drug users, right? So you're hitting money, like you're hitting real industries, right? And I'm not the professor. I'm not a subject matter expert. That'll be Marilyn on all of her numbers. But, when you look at the amount of money that is being affected by this, and at the same time, violent crime has not gone up. So her whole thing is like, why do we keep locking these people up? We keep this revolving door where they're not getting better. They still have the substance abuse program, but they're not impacting crime. They're not the ones that are shooting folks. They're not the ones that are murdering folks. They're not the ones that are raping folks. Violent crime has gone down in Baltimore City, where in 63 other municipalities that are large around this country, violent crime has significantly increased. So she did this experiment for the past year. It had no impact on violent crime. She constantly says that she thinks that Baltimore City's violent crime isn't directly tied to her policy, but it's tied to the stability in the police department. She's literally worked with 5 police commissioners in like 6 years. Now we have Commissioner Harrison, who's been there for 2+ years. She thinks it's through his leadership and his stability that is really helping to sustain the crime or help drive the crime down. But what she was able to determine is like all this petty stuff that we've been locking people up for 40 and 50 years has nothing to do with public safety in our city. It has everything to do with other stuff that we should be getting these folks help. We should have, psychiatrists and folks that are in the behavioral health space that are intervening as opposed to putting them in jail. Let's put them in real treatment.
Because so we intervening in their money because everybody requires a dollar amount.
Yeah, everybody. Yeah. I mean, but then on the flip side, from our perspective, it's saving taxpayers money.
Right.
And then from an efficiency perspective, and then from an efficiency perspective, you're freeing up resources to really go after and fight crime. I think it's interesting. A lot of people don't support it. Particularly a lot of officers, and they go to a community and someone's house is broken into, or it's like open-air drug dealing, or someone gets shot, and they're saying, "Oh, well, we can't, arrest anymore because it's new policy." No, the policy strictly is about it does not affect violence and does not affect victim-related crimes. So the police officers should still be being police or protecting and serving for victim crimes as well as for violence.
I got a flip side. You know what I'm saying? Because I need to cover that and I need to cover this. Are you familiar with, I'm sure you are, the Keith Davis Jr. case?
Oh, totally.
Okay. Now, he's about to go to his 5th trial with Maryland. What are your thoughts on this case? I mean, this family has been through a lot. So has Keith.
I don't speak on my wife's career path. We are really intentional in that. That is a discussion with Marilyn and her folks. She's the subject matter expert.
That's
She's
fair.
the state attorney. I happen to be the city council president. But that's a question for Marilyn and her team.
And that's fair. One more question. Well, not one more question, but another question. We was talking about when you was in school, right? And how you went up and you guys went by your student ID. Now, I'm real heavy on the school to prison pipeline because in order for them to identify you, you gave them your number.
Oh, yeah.
Prison are identified by numbers.
Uh-huh.
What do you think needs to change with this school to prison pipeline? Because like you said, Baltimore City schools, they didn't do you right until you went to college. And to this day, Baltimore City public schools aren't right. Inner city schools aren't right. What do you think needs to happen?
So education has always been at the forefront of holding us back. I mean, when we were slaves, when we were actual tools, it was illegal for us to learn how to read. We had amazing scholars like Frederick Douglass that taught themselves how to read. You know what I'm saying? So, I think that I'm gonna give a little controversial answer because this is a more controversial show. And you said we in a dungeon, so I'm gonna put it out there. I'm gonna go back to a point I made earlier, and I'm gonna say we know that there's structural issues that are built into our school system. Right. Now, my kids have always been in public schools. I was raised in public schools. I told you my schools earlier. I believe in the public school environment, but I'll never forget my oldest daughter when she went to kindergarten. And I was there for the first day. I was a proud father taking all these pictures or whatever. And it was a little boy sitting right next to her, fresh to death. I forgot what the little boy had on, but he had his hair shaped up. Little homie was fresh to death. And the teacher was like, pick up the pencil and write your name at the top of the page. And he was lost. He had no idea what to do. And at that point, and again, I'm not pointing blame to anybody. I'm not saying that this is the only issue. But if we're not getting our shit right in our house,
right,
how do we expect a system that has always failed us to get it right? So I'm gonna go back to a point I made earlier about like Eunice Orange and about like what I do in my house and what you do in your house with your little brother or with your son. It's like we need to have families involved. Like I don't want to when you find out your kid can't go to the prom and that's when you worrying about their grades and everything. That's a problem.
Yes.
When your kid is missing like 30%, 40%, 50% of school, they're in elementary school, they the second, third, and fourth, fifth grade. That's a problem, right? So I think that we're gonna have to literally take a step back and hold each other more accountable as it relates to our emphasis on education and not entrusting in a system that has always historically failed us, right? I always say this thing like, I'm a big sports fanatic.
Right.
And I say, like, yo, if we go to a gym and it's on their court, right? They pay for the refs. All their fans are in the stands. You know, our rim is bent. Our rim is messed up. If we dysfunctional in our locker room when we talking about our game plan, how do we expect we're going to be able to go out on the court and actually execute? So my whole thing
Right.
about like education is like, yo, we have to develop a way where we take education in our communities as serious as we take as buying Jordans, or as serious as we take as how many followers we got on IG, or whatever we're into. We have to take education like 10 times, 1,000
So,
times more serious.
so with that being said, we need to make education cool then. You know what I'm saying? What happened to the McGruff the crime dog? You feel me? Like, what happened to different things that we...
Tia, you're going to like a public, you're going to more public service announcement. I'm saying like, yo, for whether it's a single parent home, whether it's two parents, whether it's uncles and aunts taking care of the kid, we need to make sure that education is so important to those kids, right?
But we
We need
got
to
a
make
lot
sure.
of children who parents don't know how to read themselves, right? So when
Tia,
we have to make education cool. We
Tia,
have to
Tia,
say, look,
Tia,
because we
Tia, I
are
got an answer
about
for you.
babies.
Tia, I got an answer for everything you say tonight. You want to know something?
What?
The person that taught me about how important education was a woman with a 7th grade education, my grandmother,
And I get it.
Claudine
We
Moore.
talking about right now though,
No.
because
But what I'm telling
because
you is, no. What I'm telling you is,
listen
go
though.
ahead. Go
Our
ahead.
ancestors back then knew the importance of education because they didn't have an opportunity, right?
And these
So
folks know now. They
listen
know.
to me.
Our peers know now.
Listen, we talking about right now in this generation, right?
Yep.
When I'm right here. My bookstore is in the urban community. I'm right here in the smack of Greenmount. So you know,
You on the verge. You on the verge. You
I get conversations, right? It was important for me to open this bookstore because I needed our babies to come in here and correlate with what they see. So I make it cool. When you come in here, you getting energy, you getting life. I'm bringing you energy and life. You're not coming in here the same way you left out. So when I'm bringing you that energy in here, and I got babies coming in here, they are walking out with a book, and they are excited to have that book in their hand because I am making reading cool. We got teachers who go to work every morning with attitudes, and that's it. And when you wake up every morning with attitude, you go to work with the attitude, you're teaching with attitude. Who wants to be around that negative energy, right? People think children don't recognize energy, don't recognize attitude, and don't recognize different things. Let's be clear. While we need to understand as parents, we have to do our job. But we know 90% of these babies, they are going to get it from school, right? So
and that's a problem.
and that is a problem. So we gotta make it cool for our babies while they there, because when they get home, we just learned from homeschool with this virtual thing, right? You got teachers going crazy because the mother's in the background yelling at the babies. The babies don't know how to log on because the mother is yelling at them, or the parent walking across the screen naked, or the kid can't focus on the screen because the mother yelling at the baby. Like, it's so many things that happen with this virtual learning that we are not understanding the psychological damage that our babies are experiencing due to their parents.
Totally.
Because their parents hurt people. And
Amen.
people raise people, 9 times out of 10, people raising people how they were raised. So
Chris,
when you got the mother and the daughter and then the granddaughter doing the same shit, how you think the little granddaughter gonna go to school?
I get you, Tia. I get you. But with that said, I'm totally on that same wavelength. But with that said, there's a large segment of parents with kids that know better.
We definitely need the village
Right?
back. See, parents scared to whip ass now because
Hold on,
of the law.
hold on. That their priorities are off, right?
Right,
And so we need to take a step back, particularly us that are caught up in all the social media and all the things that we're caught up in right now, being fly and all this other stuff. We need to take a step back and understand that we know better, right? Particularly
right.
if you're in like our age bracket, right? Whether you had
Hold on,
a
how old are
certain,
you, Nick? I'm old.
I'm 42.
Oh, I'll be 44 this year.
I thought you were younger
Respect
than me.
your elder. Respect
Oh
your
man, black don't crack. I thought you was
elder.
about to say
I'll be
about
44.
35. Oh wow, okay. Black girl magic. I love it. Look at that melanin popping.
Hey,
But back to my point, there's a segment of us that know that and we still not doing it. I
right.
mean, you get kids that come from like two-parent home, like the county kids, right?
Yeah,
Parents work, nice car, nice all this other stuff, and education is like a mythical thing somewhere in the background, right? Like so,
right.
all I'm saying is, particularly for households like that, we need to figure out a better way of re-emphasizing the importance of education. And like I said, my grandmother had a seventh grade education. She was a
Right.
domestic worker in the city. She cleaned people's houses, and that's just who Claudine Moore was, right? And I absolutely loved her to death. But there was nothing for Claudine to sit me on her lap and tell me how important education was, or to ensure that I was coming home and I was going to do my work, or to ensure that I was going to school on time, or whatever. That's what I'm talking about. So,
And see,
how,
my great grandmother dropped out in the fourth grade. Okay.
correct. So,
So education was super important to her. My mother was the first generation college student, but I'm first generation business owner. And I get it. I get it. These grandmothers now are not like what we grew up with.
I
It's
hear you.
different.
I hear you, but we can't give them excuses, man. I
No,
mean, again,
I'm not giving them no excuse. I'm just saying, how do we make it cool to learn and to help and bring the village back, bring the community back, and get education a priority in our black community with our black
I want to
babies?
start. So I'm challenging you with. I want to start with the people that know better, because there's a segment of us in these communities that know better. They
Right.
know better. They just it's again. This is like this educational thing is kind of like an afterthought. So, I'm gonna do all that I can do on the city council. Again, K through 12 policy is on the state level through a committee I used to serve on, Ways and Means. But the city has to do much more in putting money into our school system. Actually, tomorrow at 5 o'clock, there's going to be a hearing about the Augusta Fell Savage situation, that young man that was just passed through and passed through and passed through. Ask everybody to tune in to channel 25. We're going to have that hearing, and the school system is going to come out, talk about that case, but also talk about No Child Left Behind and the situation that has put districts like Baltimore City in to keep passing kids along and passing kids along. But I guess the point I want to make, and the emphasis I'm making, is it's got to be a holistic thing, and you can't get that holistic puzzle together without that important puzzle of the family. Now, what we can't do is make excuses. So if the family structure is not there, I am not the one that's saying that it's not time for government to step up. It's not time for community to step up. It's not important to me as a city council president, because that is, if the parent is not there. I'm just saying that the parents who are there, and the parents
Yes.
who are well equipped to ensure that there's an emphasis on education in their household, that we need to hold those parents accountable in a way that we have.
Hence why I'm so excited that I'm in the process of bringing a literacy reading, math, and financial camp to my bookstore this summer for our children. And if parents want to participate, they can, because to me, we don't have many black bookstores, right? In our
No,
community, right?
no,
So
no.
it's important for me to do that, to bring our babies into an environment where they can learn and understand things that their mother and father otherwise might not teach them.
Gotcha.
But we gotta wrap it up. And listen, this was a dope interview. I
When
appreciate
we
you.
go, we got to do it again. So
We
let me
definitely
know.
gotta do it again. Let everybody, before we go though, let everybody, I'm sorry. Yeah, we gotta do it in person too.
I got to do it in person. All right, come to the bookstore.
Don't play.
I
Don't play.
will. I'll
Before
be
we
there.
let get go and everybody, and you tell everybody what you got going on next. This is my magazine. This is the first issue. State versus
State versus
magazine.
us. Shout out to State versus us. Who's on
Yes.
that cover? Is this like the Oprah thing, the old thing where you're going to be on every cover?
I'm better than Oprah, baby. Oprah invested in private prison. She ain't got nothing on me. I'm saving the prison.
Are
She
you are
investing to
you
keep them
are
there.
you going to be on every cover? That's all I
No,
ask.
no, this is the latest cover. This is the first one. The first
That's
one
all.
tells my story.
Oh, you look fly. You got the chinchilla on. I see you. What's the next cover?
I'm
Let me see the next one.
always fly, buddy.
I see you. I like the gray streak. That's dope.
You like the gray better than the blonde?
I like the gray better than the blonde.
Yeah, everybody say that. So I think I'm gray forever now.
What's the
This
What's the
is the
next cover?
latest issue.
Uh oh. Who's that?
This is my bro out in Cali. He formerly incarcerated. See, the people that land on my covers are formerly incarcerated individuals that came home and we successful.
I
Because
love it.
society tell us that when you formerly incarcerated, you come home, you trash, you can't get no job,
The,
you
the
can't do
only
nothing.
the only segment of our population that we're comfortable discriminating against is formerly incarcerated citizens.
Yes. Yes. You okay with
Expect,
children
expect,
changing their genitals, but you're not okay with felons being successful and
expect
getting
you
what
to
they
wear
need.
a scarlet letter around your neck for the rest of your life.
Listen.
That's what Band the Box was all about. But
Yeah.
we definitely got to do this again. I got another call that they keep
And
calling.
let everybody know how they can reach you.
Uh, uh, just search Nick Mosby. Check me out, Nick Mosby, NICK.MOSBY, or Nick Mosby on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Contact the office. Let us know what's going on. Nothing but love. My Nubian queen. Look
I
forward to
appreciate you.
being on your show again. All right.
I appreciate you, Nick, and keep pushing, fam.
No, this was fun. This was dope. Let's do it again.
Absolutely. Listen, everybody, you can get a copy of State versus Us magazine right here at Urban Reads Bookstore, right here in Baltimore, 3008 Greenmount Avenue, right here, Greenmount and 30th. You could come through. The hours are Tuesday through Saturday, 11 to 6, Sunday, 12 to 5. We are closed on Monday. Or you could go to my site at statevsurmag.com. We ship to prisons, and if you have a story to tell about success or you have someone that's incarcerated wrongfully, please email me at info@statevsurmag.com. This your girl, Miss Konnoisseur. I appreciate you, Nick Mosby, and I appreciate his supporters for logging in, and I appreciate my supporters for logging in and tuning in. And thank you for giving your input and everything we spoke about tonight. Until next time.